Hey there, pen enthusiasts. Today we're following up on a pen that I picked up not that long ago, which is the Jinhao 10 here. It is a retractable fountain pen, so that way you can quickly retract the nib rather than having to remove and replace a cap when you want to put the pen away. And I really liked this one, so I ended up picking up 2 more of these for myself. And really what that came down to is, one, I wanted some more, but also a question I've seen quite a few times with these inexpensive pens that are designed to be kind of a clone or a copy of a name brand fountain pen is if it's actually worth the hassle of picking them up, because the consistency can sometimes be hit or miss. So the first one I picked up wrote great, feels nice, and the overall quality feels good. But a pen I picked up from the same company, Jinhao here, would be these Jinhao 82s, and one of those wrote okay and the other one not so much. And while these are quite a bit cheaper, it's one of those things where your mileage may vary depending on what pen you get. So now I have 2 more examples here that we're going to test and try out. I picked up this 2-tone one here in an extra fine. So they do just come in a little Ziploc bag, and they've got a plastic cover here to prevent it from extending the nib in shipping. So this one here has more of a lacquered finish on it. It's nice and smooth. It's got chrome accents on the clip and the knock of the pen there. And with the Jinhao 10, you're going to get a converter included. It does not come with any cartridges of ink, so if you do want to use one of these, you'll need to pick up a bottle of ink if you don't already have some. But the pilot cartridges do work, so if you do want to use cartridges rather than filling it up, you can pick up some of the cartridges as well, and they'll work with this Jinhao 10. And the other one I have here is a gray as well, but it does have an actual texture to it. The grooves in here are imprinted into it or carved into it, however you want to say that. And again, the same chrome accents on the clip and knock, and the same internals there. So I'm going to get these filled up with some ink real quick, and we'll do a quick writing sample. The other one here is a fine, which matches my original one, and then the extra fine here on the 2-tone. So I'm going to go with some Lamy turquoise here for no other reason than that's just what I felt like when looking through my pile of ink. So to fill one of these up, you're going to disassemble the pen by unscrewing the 2 halves there, and then the converter here, you'll want to make sure the plunger is fully extended down, which you can just leave it in here, but it's hard to see that for the camera. And then we're going to dip the nib unit down into the ink, and we want to make sure that we get most of the nib and feed, so we'll go kind of to the bottom of this metal section here, which is right at the base of the nib and feed. And once we get that inserted down in there, we're just going to slowly pull that in. And you can see we didn't quite get a full fill, which if that happens to you, you can expel the ink back in and just kind of go again, and usually you'll get a little bit better fill. So we've got the pen put back together there, and I'm going to fill up the other one as well. And with these pens, there is going to be a little bump here on the metal of the nib unit that slides into this groove here, so the nib is always in the correct orientation. Screw back together and get our ink put away before I make a bigger mess than I have. Now we'll see how well this cap seals on the original one here, because I have not wrote with this since the time I made the video on it, so it has been quite a while. So that's actually quite surprising. It was a little dry there at the start, but once it got going, it looks fine. So, a little bit dry on the one that's been sitting for weeks and weeks. But these will probably be all right. So this one here should have the fine nib in it, so the same as my original. And the two-tone one here will have the extra fine nib. So as far as line variation between those two, there's not a huge amount of difference between the fine and extra fine. Maybe just a teeny tiny bit, but also the fine here was a tiny bit wetter writing, so it could be down to just that, really. The fine nib did feel like it caught the paper just a little bit more as far as feedback goes, but neither one of them would be what I would consider scratchy. So with these, I would highly recommend them if you're interested in a retractable fountain pen. They can use the Pilot cartridges if you prefer to use pre-filled cartridges and you don't want to mess with bottles of ink. They do come with the converters, so if you do have bottles of ink, you don't have to worry about picking up a compatible converter. And what it comes down to, compared to the Mahjong A1, is that these come in at about half the price as what you can pick up the Mahjong A1. And I feel the build quality is overall very similar, and really the only kind of difference in preference is the clip on the Mahjong A1 feels a little bit more loose. It's not like it's going anywhere, but it does have just a little bit of wiggle to it. I think it's because of the kind of tapered cutout in it where your hand would grip, which I assume is both kind of a design choice, but also because that's where your fingers would rest, it might be kind of a little bit more comfortable. But for me, I didn't notice these to be any less comfortable. And the clips feel quite a bit sturdier as far as kind of a side-to-side wobble, and they're plenty stiff for actually using them. So the benefits of a retractable pen is if you need to take kind of writing in short bursts, or you want your pen to be ready to go at kind of a moment's notice, something that is retractable is going to be quicker than a cap, especially a screw cap, and you don't have to worry about either putting the cap on the back, which I personally don't post any of my pens. I don't like the way it feels on most of them. So I would put the cap down on the table, and depending on the environment, that may not be something that works for you. So having a pen that's retractable could just come down to convenience. I do think they look and feel quite nice. They're decently weighty on these, as they're pretty much all metal. So they feel good in the hand. And to me, that is something that's worth giving it a shot. For me, kind of the hobby of fountain pens, I do like to pick up very inexpensive pens and find ones that write really well. That's just kind of what I find fun about the hobby. I don't actually write that much. I do the videos. I write lists and this and that, but I don't actually like write stories or journal or anything where I would be continuously writing all the time. So it's more of a kind of fun hobby and a practicality standpoint for me, rather than having some, super fancy pen that I'd only have one of. I like to have a whole bunch of inexpensive pens, where sometimes I do get some that don't particularly write well, but I think I spent like $4 a piece on these. So even if they didn't write well, it's not too big of a deal. And then these here, you can pick them up anywhere in between $10 and $20, depending on where you find them. So for me, that's really what it comes down to. I could, pick up a Pilot Vanishing Point, which is what these are based on. These are almost a tenth of the cost of a, full price Pilot Vanishing Point. So I could buy 10 of these or one Pilot Vanishing Point. And I personally don't treat my pens very well. And so I don't see the point in buying a particularly expensive pen if I can find ones that are inexpensive and write maybe not as good, but definitely better than any sort of ballpoint or even rollerball pen most of the time. So I'll have some affiliate links in the description below if you're interested in picking any of these up for yourself. And thanks for watching, and maybe watch some of my other videos if you have the time.